His focus is on helping organizations be more inclusive by making digital content accessible for people of all abilities. From Abler, please give a big hand to John Samuel.
Hi, everyone. There we go. I can't see. I guess the easiest thing for me to do today, and probably the safest thing, is just to say ditto to Steven, and I could get you guys to the bar earlier. But, you know, since I have the stage, I guess I'll talk. I guess my accessibility journey started nearly 22 years ago. That's when I was diagnosed with a degenerating eye condition and was told I was going blind. And when it hit me, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't want to rock the boat, so I didn't tell anyone. And so I just got by. You know, I graduated college, barely. I found love after a lot of heartache. And then I had a career, but it was on shaky ground. And that was around 5.5 years ago when everything just kind of, the floor just fell out underneath me, just like that. And that's when my wife and we had just had a baby, and we were living in Washington, D.C. area, and I had lost my job, and I was trying to apply to jobs online, and the applications just weren't accessible. I was using magnification and inverted colors to help me see with my limited eyesight at the time, and I just couldn't apply for jobs. And so while my wife was tending to our baby and you know, just surviving after having a baby and just, you know, doing her thing, here I was. I couldn't even apply for a job, and I'd end up crying coming to her. That's when I heard about this software that was developed at SAS, the data science company here in Cary. And it was designed to help people who were blind and low vision visualize graphs and charts using sounds. And I thought it was so cool. But the coolest thing was the guy who designed it, his name was Ed Summers, and he had the same eye condition as me and lived in my hometown of Cary, North Carolina. In the same place I never thought anyone blind could ever live. And up until that point, I had never met another blind person, and I knew I had to get in touch with this guy. So I tried for 2-3 months to get in touch with Ed. No luck. So finally, my wife said, if he can live in North Carolina, maybe we can too. So we found a house online and told my folks, and they got so excited. My dad never thought I was coming home. And my dad immediately jumped in the car to go look at this house. And as he's driving, he's talking to us on the phone, and he started yelling at something. I'm like, what are you doing, Dad? He's like, there's a blind guy on the road. Maybe it's the guy you're trying to get in touch with. It's like, Dad, please don't yell at blind people on the road. And he's like, all right, gets out of the car, walks to this poor guy and says, are you Ed Summers? And the guy says, yes, I am. And my dad puts the phone in the poor guy's ear, and after apologizing to him, he agreed to meet me. And so I came down that next week and met with him. And Ed introduced me to the world of accessibility. And what he showed me was that accessibility was a journey. I was early in my journey, you know, even though 22 years earlier I had been diagnosed, and now, you know, he had told me that, you know, I was just learning about this. And as I started learning about the accessibility space, I realized that not only was I on the beginning of my journey, but also companies. Those companies that I couldn't apply to, they were early in their journey as well. And so, I'll go to the first slide. When I started to look and get into just digging into the digital accessibility space, I realized that a lot of organizations thought they were accessible when they really weren't. They were using automated testing solutions. And these automated testing solutions only caught 30% of the issues. These are those little Chrome extensions and different things that people were using. And they just used that and they thought, oh yeah, we're accessible. And so if we go to the next slide, when I started digging into the digital accessibility space a little bit more and I launched my own business, I realized that we couldn't rely just on automated technology, but we actually had to use people with disabilities in the testing process. And we actually had to have a human-centric approach if we truly wanted to be accessible. Because accessibility was not the only thing we could do. We had to be usable as well. And I knew that from my own lived experiences. And as I got to know other people with disabilities, I knew that all of our experiences were different. And so, again, accessibility wasn't just a line of code that could be fixed by just putting on some type, running a scan. but it took actual people to go through it to really understand their experience. And so, there's organizations like SAS and RTI, but there was 98 other organizations that weren't doing the things that needed to be done. So we'll go to the third slide. And so as I got to learn about more organizations and hear what they were doing, I realized that the organizations that were doing things right, they were doing three things. They were intentional about their design. They were including people with disabilities. That's what it means to be intentional. Thinking about accessibility, thinking about usability at the design phase. They were testing things before they launched, right? Not waiting till after it's launched and then trying to fix something. They were doing it before they launched their products. And then the third piece was they were taking feedback continuously afterwards. So these are three simple things that any organization can do, whether you have just a simple website or you're creating complex software and applications. But as I wrap up, I challenge all of you to be intentional about your accessibility journey and include people with disabilities, because all of us can be just like Stephen. Thank you.
All right, time for Q&A with John Samuel. Your questions about accessibility in the digital space, please raise your hand. We'll get the question answered. I will lead off with one while people are thinking. So you mentioned that there are companies that are doing this well. You mentioned there are companies that are kind of on the journey of doing it. Is there an example of something that folks in the audience may have run across that is actually good